Welcome back, everybody, to another edition of the Fatboyz Dynasty Podcast, coming at you live on the FantasyHolics Podcast Network. On the YouTube channel, I'm Bo. That's Brant. Kind of got another exciting week here, Brant. I personally love talking about buys and sells, which is what we're going to cover today. And these buys and sells are a little more unique. They're going to be the ones that could be directly impacted by this NFL draft coming up. And with that being said, talking about the NFL draft, we are taking a break next week. We will not be live. We won't have an episode because of the fact that we are going to go live and do instant reactions to the first round picks next week. We wanted to make sure we're fresh, get the cameras all polished up, get the mics charged, the headsets rested, all the good things that need to be taken care of in order to be ready to go for the NFL draft in 2 weeks, Brant.
Yeah, absolutely. We want to make sure we get time to do some rookie profiles too, so we can discuss each rookie that's going to be coming out of the first round, or the ones that we assume will be drafted in the first round. So we definitely want to make sure we get to that. And yeah, this is one of the good times to talk about some buys and sells prior to the draft, because there will be a lot of stock change and everything else during the draft. So it's definitely time to start making a little moves here and there, and possibly making moves to get, like, a lot of my trades or a lot of my buys and sells are going to be based on going after something while giving up possibly some dynasty draft picks. But you gotta move on those before you know who's really going to be sitting in those areas.
Yeah, and so again, it's a little bit of risk reward, Brant. You may go after a buy who's hot right now, and then come time for the draft, that player gets 3 other players drafted at his position by that team, or instead of being the only running back on the roster, he's now running back 3 with some other rookies that come in with fresh legs and things of that nature. So it's definitely a gamble. And then on the other end, you could sell a player like maybe you want to sell Rashee Rice right now with the news coming out that he's got warrants out for his arrest, and maybe that gets settled with a fine and a couple hours of community service, and he's playing football next year, and you're watching him score touchdowns for the Chiefs, and you regret trading him. Again, hypothetical. The warrants are not hypothetical. Those did happen today. But nonetheless, it is a gamble at this point, Brant. So we're going to talk about some guys we want to buy, some guys we want to sell. Let's go ahead and get into this. Let's get the bibs on.
And let's see.
All right, Brant, let's jump straight into this today. Which one do you want to go to? I'm going to defer to you. If you want to start with sells, you want to start with buys, you tell me where we're taking this train and I'll put it on the tracks.
Let's go into sells. Let's start talking about some sells real fast. That way, because who knows, maybe some of these sells could be incorporated into our buys. So let's talk about the sells first.
Okay. You want to go ahead and get us started?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and get us started. You got Nick Chubb is my biggest sell, one of my biggest sells. He's coming off a devastating injury, so you're not going to get the high price that you would hope to get for Nick Chubb. But let's look, before we even talk about some of other downfalls on him, let's look what Cleveland has done in this offseason. They added, 3 different quarterbacks, so we're not sure what that's going to do. But then they added Jerry Jeudy. The line is getting older there. So they're really looking forward to what I think is really going to be opening up that playbook. Kareem Hunt's still on the roster. I think Ford is still on the roster there. I did have everything just pulled up, and of course it disappears on me.
Deontay Foreman signed there this offseason.
Yeah. Foreman's there. Ford's there. Pierre Strong's there. Naeem Hines is there. Nick Chubb is 28 years old. The line is also getting older. This guy is a guy that I've got to get off of, and right now maybe the last chance you can, while people remember how good he was Let's go back. He was obviously last year, but he's finished RB6, RB13, RB11, and RB8 in the last few years there for PPR. This guy is an absolute stud when the volume is there. And I don't think it's there anymore. And I don't think the pass catching work's going to be there anymore. They're going to open it up. And so I think now's the time to get rid of him. And I think, honestly, the best you're going to get for him, and I think this could be the highest you will get for him anytime soon, maybe a second-round draft pick, which then moves you into possibly getting a new wide receiver with this class. But, yeah, I think it's got to be a second-round draft pick, or maybe try to get a little younger in that try to get a little younger in that backfield area. Maybe go get a Roshan Johnson and another draft pick. I know the Bears did just sign Swift, but still, maybe go try to get something younger. That's something that you believe in. There, maybe you can go and snag Zach Charbonnet, because that's another guy that I actually do like this upcoming season. I think he actually feeds into Kenneth's workload quite a bit. But so I would be looking at something like that.
I don't have a problem with that at all, Brant. I do think just because of the nature of Chubb's injury more than anything else, I do think he is a sell. He may be a hold just because I don't know what the value is for a guy like Chubb. And you either drafted him or you paid a premium to get him. And again, right now, I just feel like you're not going to get that return on investment. And you know what? Nowadays, athletes are such freaks that they're coming back from these injuries all the time that you wouldn't think they would. And maybe Nick Chubb's one of those guys. Maybe you hold on to him to see if he can come back from his injury as quick and as well as some of these guys. I don't see it. I think there was a chance that they were going away from from being running a running back eccentric offense when they invest in guys like Jerry Jeudy and things of that nature. Anyway, they clearly want to establish some kind of a pass there with Njoku and Amari Cooper still in town. And then obviously the Cleveland front office, Brant, isn't super settled or on the fact that Nick Chubb's going to play this year. When you're adding running backs like that, left and right, it does kind of make it seem like maybe there's not as much faith in him returning this year as even we think. And I'm not a medical doctor by any stretch. I did stay at a Holiday Inn once, but that knee injury was grotesque.
It was.
There's no way of getting around it. So, all right, Brant, I'm going to start you off with my lukewarm. I've got some hot takes here for you today. I'm going to start off with my lukewarm one, and I think you're going to beat me up on a couple of these, and I especially think you're going to beat me up on this one. But I'm going to start off by telling you I think you should trade Zamir White. I really do. I don't think we have a whole lot of clarity right now as to what's going to happen at the quarterback position. It could be in O'Connell. I know there's reports that they may try to trade up into the early first to get a quarterback. Either way, I think you're going to have to see Devontae Adams get an excessive amount of targets this year. And I just don't trust that Zamir White's the only decent running back on that roster come, August, September of next year. Right now, there's a lot of hype with Zamir White. Right now, Zamir White's got, in my mind, the most value he's probably going to ever have in his career. And I just think that there's a chance that, I just think there's a chance that right now you could capitalize on that. Somebody in your league who is running back needy, somebody in your league who, whatever, you could ship Zamir White to him. In the games where he saw over 50% of the snaps last year, Brant, he was only a running back one time, and that was RB12 on the week. There's not a whole lot of PPR upside because he just isn't a pass catching back. That's not really his forte, if you will. And then the other thing of it is this does hold some value. I'm not saying Zamir White's not a good running back. He did average 4.3 yards per carry, which is definitely a number that you could establish yourself on in the NFL and be happy to have had that. Again, the problem lies in the fact that last year that was in the absence of Josh Jacobs. That wasn't them going out and adding another back just to compete with him. And so I think Zamir White ends up being replaced at some point this year. And if I was to try to trade him, if you were moving him for a running back or for a wide receiver, potentially Cortland Sutton would be a guy I think you could probably look to trade for Zamir White. mid-second round draft pick, probably what you're getting for him. But again, if they draft another running back, that falls way down. Romeo Dobbs is another name that's right there. And then one that I'd be really interested in gambling on, honestly, is Kendre Miller of the New Orleans Saints. Those two have a very similar value according to a lot of trade charts right now. Wouldn't be shocked to see Kendre Miller take over for Alvin Kamara when that happens.
Yeah, absolutely. And those, you talked about the 4 weeks that he saw over 50% of snaps. That was his least amount of carries, too, was 17. It took him falling into the end zone just to get to RB12. And then it took him 20, 25, and I think it was 22 carries in the other 3 weeks that he saw over 50% of snaps. I absolutely do agree with this. They already added Alexander Madison, who we saw can't take over a backfield to save his life. He already had that option. He can only do that when somebody gets hurt. So I absolutely agree with you. These backs in this draft here are going to take a while to come off the board. So I especially expect a lot of teams that you may not be thinking of adding a running back are going to be able to add them this year, because most of the years we've seen an RB or a running back or two that have shot up the board, and they're right there for them in the first, early second. And this is not that year. You could see the first running back. It could be almost the third round before you see the first running back come off the board, possibly. So everyone's going to have the opportunity for a running back in this draft. It's no longer going, who's going to be the first one to take a running back, and then when are they going to go? Everybody's going to have the opportunity for a running back. So I absolutely agree that this is one of the teams that will be adding a running back in this draft.
Okay.
All right. Here we go. Stretch right now. Hot take time. I'm going to get beat up by a lot of people here. Hopefully somebody feeds me some food after they whoop me for this one. Trade now, Puka Nacua. He is huge. This is going to be his ceiling trade now. And here's why I said, you have 3 top-tier wide receivers in this draft. And right now is your chance to go out and get a draft pick to get one of those 3 in a super flex or in a regular. Puka Nacua, I have a feeling this is going to be his highest. He played all games last year, and he finished up as stuttering through here. So you have what? Marvin Harrison, Marvin Harrison, Rome Odunze, and Malik Neighbors. They're up top. And these guys, I think all 3 will have a longer career fantasy-wise than Puka Nacua. Puka Nacua finished as a wide receiver 4 last year. But that was his first time in a long time he's been able to play a full season. I pulled up his college records, and freshman year, he only played 8 games. Sophomore year, he took an injury red shirt. 2021 was the first and only time in his college career that he was able to play a full season, and he only had 43 receptions for 805 yards. And then in 2022, he got injured as well and only played in 9 games. He was ran out of town in the first 2 years of his career out of Washington by 3 wide receivers that should be going in the top 4 rounds of this draft. So, yes, he had a phenomenal season. I will not take that. He broke records. Amazing. Who's his quarterback in 2 years? Is Stafford still the quarterback in 2 years? So, and then you talk about weeks 1 through 4, no Cooper Kupp. Week 11, 27% of snaps Cooper Kupp played, so he got banged up again. So 5 weeks pretty much without Cooper Kupp that he had to explode. So you get a healthy Cooper Kupp back. You're still not sure what the future is going to bring, and you have phenomenal receivers in this draft. Right now is your chance. Trade Puka Nacua and get one of these top 3 wide receivers, because I think they'll have better landing spots than Puka Nacua, a little more comfortable than where he's at. And I think you could get a top 5 pick for Puka Nacua. If you can't, then hold Puka Nacua. If you are not able to replace him with one of these top 3 wideouts, I think you have to hold Puka Nacua.
That's a pretty hot take, Brant. But I tell you, who's going to make your take seem like a lukewarm take is this guy. I'm selling all, not just one, all of the skill players that are on the Minnesota Vikings roster, Brant. I'm getting rid of Justin Jefferson, Aaron Jones, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson. I know, jump me really quick and say you're going to trade the number 1 player in fantasy football, Justin Jefferson. Yes, I am. Here's why, Brent. The haul that you could get for a guy like Justin Jefferson, not only could you trade Justin Jefferson for the 101 and get Marvin Harrison in your upcoming draft, but you could grab another first-round pick from said player if they have one.
Mm-hmm.
You could grab the 101 and another young wide receiver from that player's roster for Justin Jefferson. Here's my rationale for this, okay? As a Falcons fan, this is going to seem homerish, but Brant, you can pump the brakes for everybody and tell them I wasn't necessarily in love with the idea. Kirk Cousins is no longer in Minnesota. He is in Atlanta. Again, the Vikings are trying to trade up in the draft. It sounds like they're pretty infatuated with J.J. McCarthy. We don't have a lot of film on J.J. at this point. I do think J.J. is going to translate well to the NFL, but we don't know that. And if it's not them getting a quarterback in the draft, Brant, do you know who their starting quarterback is going to be next year?
For
Sam
Minnesota?
Darnold.
Yeah, Sam Darnold or some other mix of a rando arm there.
All right, so let me just take you through some of these skill position players first. I'll start with Aaron Jones, my rationale for getting rid of Aaron Jones. There's a lot of hype. He's going to a division rival, left and was signed like that, 29 years of age. Minnesota doesn't have the greatest of offensive line. We saw that last year with the way the running backs struggled to get space and create separation. I'm out on Aaron Jones, okay? Just point blank period. The offense is different. He's not going to be playing with Matt LaFleur. Just a whole lot of differences here. All right, Justin Jefferson. Last year, weeks 1 through 4 were the only weeks where he and Kirk Cousins were healthy together in Minnesota. He was the wide receiver 7, 8, 5, and 7, respectfully. Okay, pretty good numbers. You keep that pace up over the entire season, you're going to be a wide receiver 1 or 2 overall. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, here's where it gets interesting because Justin Jefferson missed some time last year as well, and then so did Kirk. So week 15 through 18, and Justin Jefferson actually came back in week 14, but he had some. You've only played like 30% of the snaps, so I'm not counting that one. Weeks 15 through 18, Brant, without Kirk Cousins, wide receiver 22, wide receiver 7, wide receiver 34, and then, yes, he did finish the season as wide receiver 1 in week 18. Not many of us benefit from a week 18 explosion in the fantasy football world. I know what you're thinking, Brant. Those numbers aren't that bad, right? 22, 7, 34, and 1. Not bad. Here's the problem. That is a much less consistent wide receiver 1 than wide receiver 7, 8, 5, and 7. Significantly less consistent without Kirk Cousins in town. Not saying he can't build that rapport and establish himself with some other quarterback in the future, but if you're telling Sam Darnold he's there for 1 year to build up a rookie, and he starts fumbling around, then you get the rookie in too early, things just may go haywire. Again, name recognition alone, Justin Jefferson is going to fetch an emancipated price. So I really like that one. TJ Hawkinson with Kirk Cousins was on pace to be tight end number 1 over the course of the season. Again, week 9, Kirk Cousins is gone. Hawkinson has some very inconsistent weeks, finishes as tight end 4. Okay. Tight end 4 is still pretty darn good. But again, this is going to be a whole season without Kirk Cousins. And the last one, Brant, this one really surprised me. Jordan Addison. I thought Jordan Addison was pretty consistently decent all year. Okay. With Kirk Cousins in Minnesota, Brant. Jordan Addison, week 1 through 8, wide receiver 19, wide receiver 28, wide receiver 39, wide receiver 15, wide receiver 32, wide receiver 1, and then wide receiver 13. Okay. So kind of all over the place, but at worst, he was wide receiver 3 for fantasy. All right, then you go, again, Kirk Cousins is out of town, weeks 9 through 18, 29, 34, 49, 41, 66, 119, 64, and 21 for Jordan Addison. That's a pretty big fall off. You had no weeks outside of the top 40 wide receivers in fantasy football for Jordan Addison with Kirk Cousins. Cousins is gone, and then he has, 5 weeks outside of the top 40. So again, that's a pretty big difference for a wide receiver that was drafted early last year. So again, the value on these players is all different, Brant, but I think all these players have a decent enough name recognition. You're fetching a decent premium. I think you still get a first-round rookie pick for Jordan Addison. It's not going to be a top 5 rookie pick, but I think you could still get a back half pick in this draft if you wanted to punt on him, let somebody else deal with him with Sam Darnold, and then take a shot at a Brian Thomas or Ladd McConkey late in the draft. That doesn't bother me as much. I was a Jordan Addison owner in a couple of leagues last year, and I'm terrified of the Sam Darnold effect in Minnesota, Brand. Am I way off, or what do you think here?
No, that offense is going to look ugly. Regardless, if you get a rookie in there too, unless that rookie's literally, I got drafted. Let me run to Minnesota and start.
CJ Stroud.
Yeah.
If he's not CJ Stroud, it's gonna be a problem.
Yeah. Unless he gets a rapport, and I understand how amazing Justin Jefferson really is. But yeah, I mean, you don't want to build a rapport with Sam Darnold. Nobody can. So that offense is going to be so bad, and this might be the highest you will ever have, or you're going to be sitting on these guys waiting for that offense to take back off and praying that it gets back up to there, or you're going to be shipping them next offseason. So no, I don't think you're way off. Right now is your chance, and I think Justin Jefferson, name value alone, you're getting one of the top 3 wide receivers, and you're probably adding something else, like you said, name value and age with him. So absolutely, I absolutely agree with this.
Okay, Brent. So there's the spicy and mild versions of the sells. Let's get into the buys.
All right, my buys. This one's not really spicy or nothing else. This is just a nice name. He's still a decent wide receiver to own, and that is Terry McLaurin. Go out and get him. He's coming off a down year. And he's going to be getting a new quarterback in the first round, but he is the clear-cut wide receiver 1 in Washington. Their defense, I know they added Dan Quinn, so the defense will, be in a different scheme, everything else. The defense is still down. They didn't add a whole lot. So they're going to be playing from behind a lot. Rookie quarterback, established rapport. Terry McLaurin's a guy that I'm going to go after. His career high right now, what do you have any idea what his career high in touchdowns would be?
Scary Terry's?
Yeah.
If you're bringing it up, it's got to be like 6 or something.
Yeah, you're almost nail on the head. It's 7. 7 is his career high in touchdowns. And just going back to when he had those 7, that wasn't even his best. That wasn't even his best finish. That was his rookie year. He had 7 touchdowns. He finished as wide receiver 29. So that's going to go up in my mind. The quarterback play is going to improve. It's going to be more accurate. I think they're the number 2 overall pick, correct? So that's Drake May or help me out here. Jaden Daniels. So that quarterback play is going to go up. I think that, obviously they're going to be playing from behind, and he's getting one of the top tier quarterbacks in this draft. And we've talked about how big this draft is for the quarterbacks. So Scary Terry's a guy, and you can go out and you can ship away Cooper Kupp to go get I know he's 28 years old, and normally that's when you start seeing that downfall. But you can sell one of your higher and older wide receivers to go get Scary Terry. But Jahan Dotson, it wasn't the guy. And I am Jahan Dotson believer and owner, and I thought he was going to be the guy to take that over, and he's just not. Scary Terry is by far and away number 1 wide receiver there in Washington. So absolutely, I would go out and be getting this guy as cheap as I possibly can, which is probably now is the cheapest he'll be. He finished as wide receiver 28 last year.
Yeah, and again, like you said, Dan Quinn, when he was in Atlanta, the offenses were always fun. Those were offenses you wanted to own fantasy relevancy. You had, Julio Jones and players of that nature in his time here. So, yeah, the track record for decent offenses is going to be there with Dan Quinn as well, because he is going to let somebody else call the plays. He is going to trust his offensive coordinator to do that. So, yeah, I have no problem with that. And Curtis Samuel being gone, that opens up more targets as well. So Zach Ertz doesn't scare me at the tight end position. So I think there's going to be plenty of room for Jahan Dotson to feast too, but I do look for a career year for Scary Terry. I absolutely love that one, Brand.
His new offensive coordinator is also Cliff Kingsbury, who likes to spread that ball out and throw it downfield.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there you go. Should be almost an air raid type of offense in Washington potentially. So, all right, Brant. I'm going to start off with my buy here. It's a player that I know you love as well as I do. So this one I shouldn't get much pushback. Deontay Johnson of the Carolina Panthers now at this point. He's obviously walking in the door as the number 1 there. He's got to compete with Jonathan Mingo going into his 2nd year and Adam Thielen going into his 407th. So there's definitely a discrepancy there. And honestly, Deontay Johnson, if you from the outside looking in, you'd look at his production last year, you'd think there was a pretty significant dip, because there really was a significant dip in his targets, his yards, and his touchdowns. But we have Kenny Pickett to blame for a lot of that, right? But last year, actually, he's coming off his best season ever in yards per catch, Brant. He had 14 yards per catch. That was a career high for him. So he's operating better. He's getting a little bit of yak after he catches the ball. Look at Adam Thielen last year in this Carolina offense with Bryce Young. He for a better part of the season, Brant, We were talking about Adam Thielen as a wide receiver 1 in fantasy. I think that lasted until like week 12 when he started to falter off a little bit just because the targets and things were there. I expect Deontay Johnson to have one of his best years of his career in Carolina this year. I think Bryce Young takes a step forward too, which helps this. But really the value for Deontay Johnson to buy is what makes him such a good buy for me, Brant, because you're leaving an offense in Pittsburgh that as long as Mike Tomlin's there, it's always going to be a run first kind of a scheme. And as a Deontay Johnson owner, let me just say that getting away from Arthur Smith before you have to play for Arthur Smith is never a bad thing. Okay. RIP to all those shares of George Pickens and Pat Freiermuth, because he did just sign Michael Pruitt the other day at tight end, who he brought with him from Tennessee to Atlanta as well. So that's going to be the guy running end arounds down at the goal line. But at the end of the day, the price tag on Deontay Johnson, Brian Robinson. If you think that Cliff Kingsbury is going to have an air raid offense, maybe you're a little down on Brian Robinson. That's a straight up coin flip. You can flip him straight up for Deontay Johnson. There's plenty of names out there. Deontay Johnson would be like a 204 in the rookie draft, somewhere in that neighborhood. You could flip for Deontay Johnson. And yeah, I know this is a star-studded wide receiver class, Brant, but by the time you get out of that first round in your rookie drafts, you're not guaranteed anything with these wide receivers, really outside of the top 4 or 5 names. I'm thinking personally, I'd rather have Deontay Johnson than the 14th best player in this rookie draft. So for me, this is a no-brainer. I think Deontay Johnson's going to have a career year this year. I think he's in line to be a top 10 to top 25 wide receiver as seasons finish. I think it'll just depend on how far Bryce Young's willing to take him, Rant.
Well, this has got to prove that I do love him, because I'm going to tie my next buy right on into that. And that's the man you just mentioned in Bryce Young. And I wrote down quite a bit because I know I'm going to get my head bit off for this one, because he did finish as QB 23. So barely good enough to be a QB 2 last year in Superflex. If you're in need of a QB2 in Superflex, this guy's going to have a huge ceiling. They just went out. They added Deontay Johnson, as you just said. Mm-hmm. They still have Adam Thielen, who's one of the best pass catchers still out there. Bryce Young only had 11 passing touchdowns last year to 10 interceptions. He finally gets some, more targets. This is one of the biggest things that he's going to get. They added 2 offensive linemen and Robert Hunt and Damian Lewis in the guard situation, because the Carolina Panthers did not help by blocking anybody for him. So I expect Bryce Young to have an outstanding year. I expect him to possibly finish inside the top 12 this year and prove why he was a Heisman winner and the number 1 pick. I don't think he's going to pass C.J. Stroud as the best quarterback in that draft. But I do expect Bryce Young to come out. He went 315 for 527, 2,877 yards, 11 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. And everything was just stacked against him. He didn't really have a true number 1 wide receiver. He had Chuba Hubbard was the best running back in the backfield there with him. And now they're starting to build something that got a new coach. And here's let me tell you who this new coach, Dan Canellis, has had the last 2 years. 2 years ago, do you know who the quarterback was that he was coaching? Geno Smith.
Oh, really?
He was the QB coach in Seattle for Geno Smith 2 years ago.
Okay.
Then moved up to offensive coordinator of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Baker Mayfield's breakout. The last 2 years, he's had a quarterback breakout. All signs point to this to be a Bryce Young season. Now, if you're in need of a quarterback outside, let's talk Superflex here. Outside of the top 6 picks, you're not getting a guaranteed QB this year. Trade it. Go get Bryce Young. If you are in need of a quarterback, trade anything past the 6th overall pick. Trade that away. Go get Bryce Young. I think you got to get him for a late first, early second, but I think he is well worth it in this buy category, especially since all signs are pointing them to allowing him to break out this year, adding some offensive linemen, adding some offensive weapons. So I expect Bryce Young to finish as a top 12 QB this year.
Okay, I like it. Like I said, that goes hand in hand with Deontay Johnson. If Deontay Johnson's going to explode, that means Bryce Young's got to too, so I don't hate it.
One of the other names I did have to go trade for him was Kenneth Walker, as I aforementioned. I think that backfield gets a little shaky this year.
Okay. All right, here it is. Here's my spicy buy for you, Brant. I'm buying shares in Tank Dell and Nico Collins this offseason.
Okay.
Stephon Diggs. Who cares about Stephon Diggs going to Houston? Here's why I don't care, Brant. 75 targets to Robert Woods last year, 55 targets to Noah Brown. There's your target space for Stephon Diggs. Those guys were playing opposite of Nico Collins, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's your targets for Stephon Diggs. He can feast. He can have himself a good year where he's not pouting on the sidelines, and that still leaves plenty of food on the table for Tank Dell and Nico Collins. Both of these guys last year, Brant, were on pace for great seasons. Neither one of them played a full season. They both dealt with some injuries. Tank Dell, 7 touchdowns in just 12 games with C.J. Stroud last year. Nico Collins, 8 touchdowns in 15 games last year. I look for both of those two to improve their touchdown totals for next season as well. And right now, people are down on these players, Brant, because of the addition of Stephon Diggs. People are looking at Nico Collins and going, he can't coexist. People are looking at Tank Dell and go, where does this put him in the order? You're going to get these players for cheaper now than you could have ever even dreamed of during the season last year. Both of these names were very hot commodities after the first couple of weeks of the season because of how well C.J. Stroud was playing, how well they were both playing, Brant. And then obviously you did have the Dell injury, so that slowed things down a little bit for Tank. But people are down on this. This is the landscape in fantasy football changes so often, and I think C.J. Stroud's good enough. I think the Houston Texans offense is good enough that they can support 3 standout wide receivers as well as that tight end and Dalton Schultz, who's going to be back. There's no running game there. The running game does not scare me whatsoever. I don't think they have a running game where they're going to be able to run the ball 40 times a game and only throw it 20. I think it's going to be much more likely they throw the ball 40 times a game and run 20, which again leaves plenty of work for all 3 of these guys. If you're telling me right now that the owner of Tank Dell or the owner of Nico Collins in your league is down on those players and you can flip a second round rookie pick for either one of them, yeah, you're absolutely going out and doing that. Again, honestly, I feel the same way on Stephon Diggs, though. If you have somebody in your league who's got a Stephon Diggs share and they want out because they don't think he's going to be as good as he was in Buffalo, I'd flip a second round pick on that. Again, outside of the first round rookie draft, Brant, 9 times out of 10, these are coin flip players that 50% of the time you miss out on anyway in the second rounds and later. So if I've got a second round pick and I can entertain one of those players with that pick, I'm taking that gamble. That's worth it to me.
Absolutely. And as a Tank Dell owner in one of our leagues, I am not shipping him for anything. I'm holding him tight. Seeing what this injury coming back from. Absolutely. I absolutely love this. I expect this Houston. I expect to be talking a lot about this Houston offense as we progress closer to fantasy drafts. I expect this to be our to the moon offense, possibly, even though they kind of already took off there last year. I expect a lot of talk to be surrounding this offense next year or this next season.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more, Brent. I do think there's like you said, they may not be to the moon because they've already passed it, but maybe we can get them to Mars or something. Maybe this is the offense that we just have take all the way off. Who knows? But again, definitely some things that are going to change in the next couple of weeks, potentially with some of these names, and it's definitely a gamble. But again, for the right price, some of these gambles are worth taking, Brent.
Absolutely. So I think that's all we got for buys and sells today. As we mentioned earlier, we're going to take the week off, get our rookie profiles in order, start making sure we're ready for our live. Come on April 25th. We'll be coming, I think, probably 10-15 minutes before the draft even kicks off. We'll be getting all of our stuff together. We'll be live. So once again, don't mind a fat guy or two eating on screen. Possibly running away from the screens because it is a long night. It was a long night being live. It's a long night, I'm sure, sitting in front of the computer too. Mind you, we both do have children, so you probably will hear some extra kids. No, I shouldn't say extra kids. You should be here. You probably will be hearing some kids in the background too. But we're going to be here. We're going to get some instant reaction. We're going to be getting some of our guys from the FantasyHolics to join us and talk about their players. Maybe even if they're just jumping on to talk about what their team's going to do in the draft. But like I said, it's a great time right now. April's always fun to do. We did get our first game announced. It's that Friday. What was it? September 6th in Brazil, and that's Green Bay versus Philly. So that is a Friday game on week 1. So you're getting week 1. You're already guaranteed. You're getting a Thursday, a Friday, and a Sunday and a Monday game. You're guaranteed 4 days of football come week 1 in September.
Yeah, and if that's not Christmas come early for us in the fantasy community, I don't know what is, Brant. But yeah, like you said, I think that does wrap it up for us. If you have any questions, anything you want to hear discussed on this podcast, don't hesitate to send that our way. Send a message to the FantasyHolics page. Come in here and drop one on the comment on the video. We'll find it. We'll get it out there. So I think that does do it for us, Brant.
Yeah, absolutely. If you guys have any questions or anything you want to be brought up on the live in 2 weeks when we are, email or send us a Facebook message on the Fatboyz Dynasty page or even on the FantasyHolics. Give us a little bit of content to talk about in between picks or as we wait for that first pick to come in. So if you have anything you want to talk about, trades maybe going down in your league, bring them to us. We'll discuss it on air. Jump in with us, and we'd be absolutely love to have some extra comments in. But as always, stay hungry
and stay fat, my friends.